Donald Trump regularly trolls people, the tactic of doing something to upset people, which both his allies and critics know.
I think he's trolling people, honestly. This is something that's in the purview of the executive branch. I think some of these people have already lost their clearances. I think he's just trolling people.
America's done it. We've actually elected an internet troll as our president.
So how should America reckon with a president who does deliberately try to provoke? And do we have to reach beyond the typical political toolbox? Some Trump critics say yes, it's as much a cultural challenge nowadays as a political one. They point to internet celebrities like Tekashi 6ix9ine. He's a pretty notorious 22-year-old troll who's amassed over 14 million followers online, known for his controversial look, you see it right there, as well as his behavior. And many have begun comparing his rise to Donald Trump. That includes radio host Ebro Darden, who's been here on The Beat, as well as my next guest, author Charlamagne Tha God, who interviewed Tekashi, where they discussed how trolling and being hated fueled his rise.
No matter how much I'm hated, nobody's doing what I'm doing, and I love it.
And that musician also shouted out Trump.
Behind all that racist, I feel like he's a good president, to be honest with you.
I am joined by Charlamagne Tha God. You hear the laughter. He is the co-host of the nationally syndicated radio show The Breakfast Club. He's the author of Black Privilege, Opportunity Comes to Those Who Create It. And his show delves into culture and politics. He's even interviewed Hillary Clinton as well as many other leading musicians.
I'm surprised you caught one of Tekashi's best trolls during that Fat Joe interview when he said that, you know, behind the racism, Donald Trump is a good president. That was a troll.
That was a troll.
That was absolutely a troll.
This is a person who isn't familiar to everyone, but there is this overlap with Donald Trump. What's going on here?
I don't think it's an overlap with Trump. I think Tekashi and Trump both troll for different reasons. I think Tekashi trolls for attention. Donald Trump trolls for distraction. You know what I mean? As long as he keeps us talking about things that don't matter so, you know, a tweet about the NFL or a tweet about, you know, Omarosa, we won't pay attention to the real issues, which is whether or not he has been in cahoots with Russia.
But something's happening in our politics and our culture where, and you and I have talked about this, people who still stand by Donald Trump, they say they like that he's upsetting everyone. They like that Washington's freaking out. And a lot of music fans look at someone like Tekashi and think this isn't the best music, and his fans, which are over 10 million on Instagram, and we mentioned at the top of the charts, say they like how he upsets everyone in the game.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I can't relate to either because, you know, like I'm not neither one to their basis. See, the difference between Tekashi and Trump are like this. Tekashi will go out there and troll, and he'll say a bunch of wild, reckless stuff, and we'll pay attention to that. But then he'll put out some music, and his fans eat that up. I don't like his music, so I don't eat it up. Same thing with Trump. Trump go out there, talk reckless, talk crazy, then he'll do something that his fans like. I still don't know what that something is, but clearly his base eats it up.
When you look at someone like Donald Trump or Sarah Palin, who did a lot of this, or this artist we're talking about, what is the antidote? How do you deal with this as a culture when, as you know, and the reason why I mentioned the internet is, it is this constant attention competition?
I think that we all have to move off strategy and not emotion. I think as long as they got us in our feelings, you know, and I'm not talking about the Shiggy Challenge, as long as they got us in our feelings and we're being emotional, we're distracted and we're not paying attention. Like if you look at the Democrats and the liberals, they're not even talking about the midterms this year. Like, why don't you rally people, you know, energize people to vote so they can get the House and the Senate back? Like, who's your candidate for 2020? As long as they got them distracted and, you know, Donald Trump has them distracted constantly talking about him, you're not talking about what you can do for the people. And I don't want you to be anti-Trump. I want you to be pro-people.
Charlamagne Tha God, always appreciate you coming on The Beat.
Thank you. And hopefully we can get Tekashi 6ix9ine to go out there and support Trump. You know what I mean? Go out there and stomp for Trump in the 2020 election.
That's a rally.
Maybe that'll scare America. You know what I mean? Like, you know what? I always say if Trump wasn't a privileged white man, he'd be a SoundCloud rapper. I always say that.
On that note, again, thank you, Charlamagne. And I want to mention Charlamagne's forthcoming book, Shook One, coming out October 23rd. It doesn't stop. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.